Saad's been here before. That's Saad Youssef. We know him. He does great work with the Athletic. But we've got a special guest joining us tonight, the one and only Dia Wall, who is a reporter and anchor now on WFAA TV. She's also local, born and raised right here in North Texas, been a Cowboy fan her entire life. So Dia's going to chime in with the fan perspective. And Dia, since you finally got off the schneid with your team and you got that win, you get to lead us off with your reaction to that crazy game today.
It was wild. I mean, I just remember my husband screaming when they missed the kick. He was like, oh my God, it was way left. And I think for me, you always love to celebrate a win. I think as a fan, though, we know how this season's going to end, right? We know the Cowboys really not about to make a splash in the playoffs. And so for me, seeing them drop out of the top 10 in the first round of the NFL draft, I'm like, ooh. Was it worth it? But I will say this. I think meeting up with Dan Quinn, the defense making the statement that it did, was really important. And I think it gives this team just a little bit of juice. And I always love a Turpin return for a touchdown.
Oh, yeah, TCU. We know you do. TCU.
Saad, what stuck out to you?
Well, I just the sloppiness of the game, especially in the first half to be particular, but really it extended all the way until the fourth quarter. But, you know, it just showed, it looked like it was two teams that, you know, were really struggling, which we know that's the case with the Cowboys. But I was really surprised with how much the Commanders actually did struggle, especially the Commanders' defense really surprised me because I really thought they'd get a lot more pressure on Cooper Rush. The Cowboys were without their starting left guard, All-Pro Tyler Smith, future Hall of Fame right guard Zach Martin, and the Commanders really weren't able to do anything, and that's Dan Quinn's hallmark. He has those few former Cowboys with Dante Fowler, Dorrance Armstrong. So that was really surprising to me that the defense wasn't able to do more.
I mean, that's fair. I think the thing that stuck out to me was the Commanders' late touchdown. Because what are the odds that you give up, what was it, an 80-some yard
86.
pass play, 86-yard pass play to tie the game on you didn't even let a drive go. It was just the first play in a breakdown, and all of a sudden it just felt like they just found the banana peel on a game that they played out of their minds on defense. Joe, was that the first thing to come to mind? And you're thinking, oh my goodness, we're going to overtime? Or do you think they should have gone for two and just tried to end it right there?
I didn't think they should have gone for two. They were at home. I think they think they're the better team. So, no, I didn't think they should go for two. I started laughing out loud while watching that play. I did. Full transparency. I was like, oh, we're going to do this today. That's how we're going to figure out a way to lose another game. That was my initial thought. And then I will say this. Crazy things have happened at that particular field before when the Cowboys and Commanders play. There have been late game field goal situations. I remember a block kick long ago during the Tony Romo era when the Cowboys found a way to lose one that they should have won. So that field is so bad, it is known in NFL circles to be one of the worst, but I still couldn't believe when Seibert missed the kick. So it was just one of those deals where it was such an uneven game, crazy game. Neither team really played particularly great, but I will make this one point. In the battle of Dan Quinn versus Mike McCarthy, Big Mike got a win today because Cooper Rush got the ball out quick, on time, on target. I know the first half was hard to watch offensively, but on the balance, in the second half, they got drives going. And I think Cooper Rush really put his name in the hat as trying to retain that backup post behind Dak Prescott. Because I think these last two games were almost disqualifiers, but he's right back in the running to try and remain the backup quarterback with the Dallas Cowboys.
Dia, I'm curious from your perspective, how much was the McCarthy-Quinn dynamic on your mind during this game? I know you were thinking draft capital, but considering the head-to-head there, was it even a thought that, like, hey, Quinn could have potentially taken over for McCarthy here had things gone differently?
I mean, I think this was an important game for both head coaches, right? I think, you know, Dan Quinn, this is him spinning the block a little bit, getting his opportunity to prove that he has what it takes to be the head coach. And you're going up against your former boss, right? And I think we always had questions about who's really running the show, if it was McCarthy or Quinn, when they shared a sideline. And then also, I mean, Mike McCarthy, my Lord, whether you love him or hate him, this man has been through a gauntlet this year. You know, you don't get an extension. So you're basically coaching for your future. And I think it's been pretty well documented that he doesn't have a ton of power. And so I think you're going at diminished capacity. You don't have full strength starting players on either side. You don't have your starting quarterback. You're without your, number one dynamic corner. I think for him, it's like I just wanted to get the win. And I think Cooper Rush, I got to agree with Joe, was a huge part of that. He didn't play great initially, but I think he is making the case that, hey, I can steady the ship while Dak is out and do what needs to be done. But I definitely think for McCarthy and for Quinn, this was, a game that was circled on the calendar from the release.
No, I think you're totally right about that, Dia. And it was interesting. Mike McCarthy has not had a good time this season, but a little solace in the nation's capital on this day. All right, you guys, hang tight. We got plenty more to talk about coming up after this. More on the Cowboys win. And what about Trey Lance? We got a little bit of a taser. Do we need more of the Trey Show or not? We'll talk about it all next on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show.
We've had some issues with the offense and the defense. It felt like the special teams has been the lone bright spot for this group all year. Rocky start, solid finish.
Craziest game when you return 2 kickoffs for touchdowns. But then listen, there were some real issues with the Cowboys special teams. Bones, what is going on? I mean, to have a kick block, to have a punt blocked as well in the same game. I mean, there are protection issues with the shifting offensive line and made things difficult, I know, but still, there's some things that you don't expect to happen, especially from that unit, and they really stuck out. And fortunately for the Cowboys, they didn't really sway this game the way that they could have. In terms of special teams, Saad, what bothered you the most about it?
I think it was the protection, both on the kick and punt. For me, Brandon Aubrey missing a field goal, that doesn't concern me at all. We have enough of a track record with him to know that he's going to be just fine. But for me, the protection is something that really did stand out as a sore spot. Something to keep in mind, though, when it does come to the protection and when it comes to special teams in general. Special teams is kind of the forgotten child when it comes to 3 units. And when a team is dealing with as many injuries as the Cowboys are on offense and defense, there is a lot of shuffling going on personnel-wise on special teams because there's a trickle-down effect on who's getting more playing time offensively and defensively. So I wonder how much that plays a role. But at the end of the day, I think those 2 things really stood out. And then a lone other thing I would say, Wanya Thomas has to know that he has to get down. He can't return that for a touchdown.
I know.
So that's another thing that I would say really stood out as well.
You want to talk about a banana peel. That was the first thing to come to mind. I was thinking the one way you can lose this game is to score right now and give Washington the ball back and potentially force overtime. Dia, was that even a thought in your mind, or were you just kind of crazed that they recovered the onside kick and everything was gone at that point?
Gentlemen, I hate to say it, for the first time in my adult life, I don't really care about the outcome. That's so sad, but it's like, to your point, yes, could they have marched back down, scored? But Washington did not look great today.
No,
they didn't look polished. No. They didn't look buttoned up. And I think for all the Cowboys fans who are yelling, like, all we need is a young quarterback that we're going to draft in the top 10 and we get a fresh coach in here, Washington did all that. Started the season really hot. They look more like the Cowboys this season than the Cowboys do in terms of the ebbs and flows. But when it comes to special teams, I would agree with Saad. I do think when you have a lot of shuffle, especially for guys who are further down that depth chart, they're not used to working together. But still, y'all are professionals, right? And I do think the protection was a little lax. But the lack of discipline is something that we've seen from Mike McCarthy teams for the duration of his tenure. So something like Wanya not doing what needs to be done, this is par for the course for the Cowboys under McCarthy, unfortunately.
And it's situational football, and it's something that McCarthy talks about all the time, and you continue to see these small little detail issues, but that's the difference between being good and being great. The devil is always in the details. And Dia, I want to dovetail off something else you said about the Commanders not looking good, because you talk about the young quarterback. Let's talk about the offensive coordinator for the Commanders, one Cliff Kingsbury, right, who could be in the running for some of these jobs, perhaps maybe even in the running for when the Cowboys are looking. He looked awful today. Mike Zimmer owned him on this day for the lion's share of that ball game. The only time things really turned around were when the Cowboys really got soft, went into a zone. It was close to prevent, almost prevented them from winning, the old cliche and all that good stuff. But Cliff Kingsbury, in my mind, dropped down a few pegs.
Saad, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything Joe said. And you know, I do want to also, while I do agree with Cliff Kingsbury, we've seen this pattern both in the pros and colleges where in the second half of the season, his offenses do stall. I do want to give credit to also Zimmer, though. I think the defense for the Cowboys has incrementally gotten better since the bye week. And also a big shout out to Josh Butler, because in that situation, the corner on the other side of what's previously been Trayvon Diggs, but today was Deron Bland, Kalen Carson in that situation previously has gotten picked on relentlessly by opposing quarterbacks, and Jaden Daniels tried to do that with Josh Butler, but it did not work because Butler answered the call every single time.
Dia, get in there. What were you going to say?
I'm over the retreads, right? We need fresh talent to come in. Go get me somebody that's on the sideline in Detroit right now.
Ben Johnson? Right? Would you like Ben Johnson?
Ooh, I might rename my second child for that. The Cowboys need a fresh attitude. The days of like the more traditional, coaches, so to speak, the Andy Reids are so rare in this league right now. You have to have creative, young, just more fresh, right? Attitude on your offensive play calling. I mean, we already know. I'm tired of the screens behind the line of scrimmage. We need, I think, young, fresh perspective and people who have a proven track record right now where they are. I mean, if you would have told me the Lions would look the way they look right now, even 2 years ago, I would have said you were insane. But I think there's something to be said for it. Zimmer's great. I agree with Saad. I think he's doing a great job. But I don't want to see anybody who's already had a shot somewhere else. Bring us somebody fresh.
And this isn't a shot at Mike McCarthy necessarily, but Joe, I'm curious. No. Why do we keep having this whirlwind of the same old 5, 10 names cycling in and around on the mid-tier teams? Like they always feel like they're a better coach away, but not all of a sudden willing to take a risk and try and do something completely different. What makes the difference for teams that just want that next step but not don't want to go on a limb? Think
about your decision makers. By and large, they're people who are very conservative in terms of the business and the way they go about doing things. And that's the conservative play, to get someone with demonstrated ability, right? But again, I think Jerry Jones will lean that way, you guys. He normally doesn't get, the young, rookie, unproven head coach unless it's a guy like Jason Garrett who he's known for a long time.